everyone. Do you know what I am reading right now? I am reading the letter of Jim Macpherson. Let me remind you that I ended the first part of the chapter with suspense, right? And today I am going to reveal it. What was written in the letter? Let's read together. Dearest Connie, I write to you in a much happier frame of mind. Now here I stand for the captain of the English Army, Mr. Jim Macpherson, and as you all know that he wrote a letter to his beloved wife, Connie. In a much happier frame of mind, it means while writing letter, he was very happy. Why he was happy? Because something wonderful has just happened that I must tell you about at once. Means here he wanted to share something wonderful which happened with him recently with his wife. That's why he wrote a letter here to his wife, because something wonderful, something unbelievable happened with him recently. We all were standing to in our trenches. We were all standing to means taking up positions in our trenches. Trenches means long deep ditches in the ground where soldiers hide from the enemy. We can also say that a long deep hole dug in the ground for soldiers to hide during attacks. Okay, so we all were standing to in our trenches. We all the Britishers, they all were standing to in their trenches yesterday morning. Yesterday morning was Christmas morning. It was crisp. Crisp means it was fresh and quiet all about. The morning was quiet and fresh, as beautiful a morning as I have ever seen. It means here Jim, he have never seen such a beautiful morning. As cold and frosty. Frosty means very cold. As a Christmas morning should be. As we all know, December, it used to be the coldest month. And here he wrote letter to Connie in 1914. So in 1914, December was the coldest month and winter was at its peak. Okay, so extremely cold. As cold and frosty as a Christmas morning should be. The author read the letter. The letter had been written by a captain of the English Army. His name was Jim Macpherson. He had written it to his wife, Connie. A wonderful incident had happened on the battlefield on the Christmas day. Jim Macpherson had narrated it in his letter. I should like to be able to tell you that we began it. Now here something is there. I should like to be able means he wanted to be able that we began it. What was the thing that he wanted to say that he began it? But the reality was, I am ashamed to say, is that Fritz began it. Fritz means Fritz, a name for a German soldier. Okay, Fritz is a common name. Okay, common German name. But Fritz began it. The truth is. Now what was that which Jim wanted to begin, but actually reality was that he was ashamed to say that Fritz began it. What was that? First, someone saw a white flag waving from the trenches. So, first, someone was there who saw a white flag waving from the trenches. I told you trenches, opposite. So, from the opposite direction, okay, someone saw that someone was waving a flag. Then they were calling out to us from across no man's land. No man's land. No man's land means an area of land between the borders of two countries, okay, or between two armies during a war, and which is not controlled by both of them. No man lands means an area of land between the borders of two countries and which is not controlled by both of them. So then they were calling out to us from across no man's land, Happy Christmas, Tommy. Tommy, a common English name used here, referred to British soldiers. Now it means what? From Fritz size. Fritz means, I told you, a name for a German. From the German soldier side, there was something. What was that? That they were calling out to us. Means German were calling. Calling to whom? To the British from across no man's land. Happy Christmas, Tommy. Okay, they were wishing them Happy Christmas. Happy Christmas. When we had got over the surprise, some of us shouted back, same to you, Fritz. And when they listened, okay, that they were wishing them, then some return back, they also shouted back, okay, same to you, Fritz. I thought that would be that. That would be that here means that was all. That was the end of the matter, that Fritz wished us and Tommy, they wished them in order to reply them, okay. So he thought, who thought? Jim thought now the matter was over. It was the end. Both the teams, okay, they wished each other Happy Christmas. He thought so, and we all did. But then suddenly one of them was up there in his grey coat and waving a white flag. Then suddenly what happened? One of them from the German team, okay, one of them from the German soldiers, one of them was up there in his great coat and waving a white flag. Don't shoot, lads. Lads means young boy, okay. Someone shouted. When he waved his, flag, a white flag, so someone shouted, don't shoot. And no one did. No one shooted. Then there was another Fritz up. Now, first of all, one man, he stood up. Now, after looking at him, another Fritz, he stood up on the parapet. Parapet means a long wall along the edge of a route, bridge or other high structure that prevents people from falling down. You can see it at your roof also, okay? A long wall along the edge of a route, bridge on other high structure that prevents people from falling down. So someone shouted that don't shoot and no one did. Then there was another Fritz up on the parapet and another, keep your hands down. Then slowly, one by one, they were standing up and keep your heads down. I told the men it's a trick, but it was not. Now, Jim thought that it was the trick of German soldiers. Might be they wanted to shoot them, they wanted to kill them. But actually, the reality was not that. So, because here it was unbelievable for Jim Macpherson that Fritz, that German soldiers, they were wishing them, they were calling them. He got shocked. That's why in the very first line he wrote that I should like to be able to tell you that we began it, but the truth I am ashamed to say, means here there is a regression. That is that Fritz began it, that it was done by Fritz. Okay. The English and the Germans were at war. The two armies stood in their respective trenches on the two sides of the no man's land. Suddenly, Jim Macpherson saw someone waving a white flag from the enemy side. Then he saw many German soldiers calling out to them. They were wishing a happy Christmas to the English soldiers. Some English soldiers shouted back, "Same to you." Jim Macpherson thought that was all. That was all ended, that they all wished each other Merry Christmas. But to his surprise, he saw many Germans moving towards them. The captain, Mr. Jim Macpherson, he was alarmed. It could be a trick. He thought that it could be a trick of enemy to attack them, but it was not. Now let's read further. One of the Germans was waving a bottle above his head. So one of the Germans was waving a bottle above his head and he said, "It is Christmas Day, Tommy." Tommy, I told you, it's an English name used here to refer British soldiers. So he said, "British soldiers, Tommy, it is a Christmas Day," and he was waving his bottle. Who? One of the Germans. We have scanaps. Now let us see how we pronounce this word. Synapse. How we pronounce synapse? We have synapse. We have sausage. Sausage means sausage, a mixture of meat cut into very small pieces. Okay, sausage. We meet you. Yes, by this time there were dozens of them walking towards us across no man's land and not a rifle between them. Now, it was the beautiful moment when one of the Germans, he waved his bottle and he said that it's a Christmas Day and we have synapse and we have sausage, we meet you. And by this time, there were dozens of them. They were walking towards no man's land and there was not a rifle between them. Little Private Morris was the first up. "Come on, boys, what are we waiting for?" So Little Private Morris, he was the first person who came first and he told all the boys, "Come on, boys, what are we waiting for?" Means they are calling each other for the celebration. And then there was no stopping them. No one was there who stopped them. I was the officer. I should have stopped them there and then, I suppose. But the truth is that it never even occurred to me I should. It means at that moment, Jim, he was writing to his wife that I was the officer, okay, and I should stop them that don't come here for the celebration. I should do that. But he didn't. It even it never even occurred to his mind that I should do that, because internally he also wanted that celebration. All along their line and hours, I could see men walking slowly towards one another. Grey coats, khaki coats, meeting in the middle. Now here is the feeling of unity. Now what type of unity? Where khaki and grey coats, they were meeting in the middle. And I was one of them. And what he wrote, that he was also the part of it. Jim was also the part of it. I was part of this. In the middle of the war, we were making peace. And it was really incredible that in the middle of the war, they all were khaki coats and grey coats. They all were making peace. One of the Germans was waving a bottle above his head and said, "It's a Christmas Day, Tommy." All Germans were bringing with them wine and canned meat. Now there were no rifles between the soldiers. That was the beautiful scene where grey coats and khaki coats meeting in the middle. They forgot about war and they were making peace. You cannot imagine, dearest Connie, my feelings as I looked into the eyes of the Fritz officer. Now what he was writing, that you cannot imagine, dearest Connie, my feeling. That what was the feeling inside him. I looked into the eyes of the Fritz officer, who approached me, hand outstretched. Hand outstretched means stretch his hand to hold it in order to shake hand with him. Okay, so the Fritz officer Hans Wolf, he approached Jim Macpherson, gripping my hand warmly and holding it. And when he held his hand, he gripped his hand warmly and held it. I'm from Düsseldorf. I played the cello in the orchestra. Happy Christmas. Now here Hans Wolf, he introduced himself to Mr. Jim Macpherson. He told him that he is from Düsseldorf and he played the cello in the orchestra, and he also wished him Happy Christmas. Captain Jim Macpherson, I replied, and a Happy Christmas to you too. I am a school teacher from Dorset in the west of England. Now here Jim Macpherson, he replied, he wished him a Happy Christmas, and he also told him that he was a school teacher and he is from Dorset in the west of England. Now here, Jim Macpherson was extremely happy to be the part of the peace. He was overwhelmed with happiness when the German officer Hans Wolf moved towards him, and they both shook their hands very warmly. Then the German officer said that he was from Düsseldorf and he played cello in the orchestra. In return, Jim Macpherson also introduced himself. He told him that he was a school teacher from Dorset. Ah, Dorset, he smiled. I know this place. Now he here stands for Hans Wolf, and he said that he know this place. I know it very well. We shared my rum ration. Rum ration means a limited amount of food or drink that is enough for everyone. So we shared my rum ration and his excellent sausage. and we talked, Connie, how we talked. He spoke almost perfect English. Now, what he said that we shared rum ration and excellent sausage with each other, and we talked. And how we talked? Because Hans Wolf, he knew perfect English. But it turned out that he had never set foot in Dorset, never even been to England. And he also came to know that he never set foot in Dorset and never even been to England. Then also he knew everything about Dorset. How? He had learned all he knew of England from school and from reading books in English. So he had learned all he knew of England from school and from reading books. His favorite writer was Thomas Hardy. Thomas Hardy was his favorite writer, and his favorite book, Far from the Madding Crowd. So, Far from the Madding Crowd, it is the fourth novel and Thomas Hardy's first major literary success. Okay, so it was his favorite book. So out there in no man's land, we talked of Bathsheba and Gabriel Oak and Sergeant Troy. Who are these? They all are the character of the novel Far from the Madding Crowd and Dorset. It means in no man's land, they talked about the characters from the book Far from the Madding Crowd, and they also talked about Dorset. He had a wife and one son, born just 6 months ago. Even he also shared to Jim about his family. As I looked about me, there were hurdles. Hurdles means to get close to other people because of cold. So what Jim saw, that there were hurdles of khaki and grey everywhere. All over no man's land, smoking, laughing, talking, drinking, eating. Hans Wolf and I shared what was left of your wonderful Christmas cake. So what he saw, that in no man's land, there were huddles of khaki and grey everywhere. And what they were doing, they were smoking, drinking, eating, laughing together. And he said that Hans Wolf and I shared what was left of your wonderful Christmas cake, Connie. It means Connie sent him Christmas cake, and they both shared. Hans Wolf and Jim Macpherson, they both shared the leftover of the Christmas cake. He thought the marzipan means a sweet covering on a cake made from sugar and eggs and almonds. So they shared that, and what he said, that he thought the marzipan was the best he had ever tasted. I agreed. He said that he had ever tasted such marzipan. Means it was, for him it was very tasty, and I agreed. Who agreed? Jim Macpherson was also agreed with Hans Wolf. We agreed about everything, and he was my enemy. Now here, though Hans Wolf was his enemy, then also they both were agreed about everything. There never was a Christmas party like it, Connie. Jim Macpherson wrote to his wife that he had never seen such Christmas party in his life. It's unforgettable for him. As Hans Wolf came to know that Jim Macpherson was from Dorset, he smiled He said he knew Dorset, though he had never been to Dorset. He had learned all he knew of England from the school and from reading books in English. His favorite writer was Thomas Hardy, and he especially liked his fourth novel, Far from the Madding Crowd. Jim Macpherson shared with Hans Wolf the Christmas cake his wife had sent for him. Hans Wolf loved that cake and said that marzipan was the best he had ever tasted. According to Jim, there never was a Christmas party like it. Jim wrote to Connie in the letter. Then someone, I don't know who, brought out a football. Great coats were dumped in piles. Dumped means throw, and piles, to put things one on top of the other to form a pile. So grey coats were dumped in piles to make goalposts. So they throw their coats, and in piles, and they made goalposts. And the next thing we knew, it was Tommy against Fritz, out in the middle of no man's land. The next thing they all knew, that Tommy against Fritz in the middle of no man's land. Hans Wolf and I looked on and cheered. Now both the teams started playing football match. And Hans Wolf and I here, Jim Macpherson, looked on and cheered. They cheered both the teams, they clapped our hands and stamping our feet. Stamping our feet means to keep putting one foot down hard and noisily on the ground, and then the other, in order to make yourself less cold or to make a noise. So they were stamping their feet to keep out the cold as much anything, because it was too cold. I told you it was extreme cold, so that's why they were stamping their feet, they were clapping, they were cheering the teams. There was a moment when I noticed our breaths mingling in the air between us. And there was a moment when Jim Macpherson, he noticed that their breaths, British and the Germans, their breaths were mingling, means mixing in the air. He saw it too and smiled. Jim Macpherson, he said after a while. He saw it. Who? Hans Wolf. He also saw that. And he smiled. And he said after a while, I think this is how we should resolve this war. Resolve means that we should solve this war. A football match, no one dies in a football match. No children are orphaned. No wives become widows. Now, very beautiful lines, very appealing and very heart-touching lines. Hans Wolf said. He said that I think this is the way that we can resolve this war. We can solve this war without fighting. Then a soldier brought out a football. The soldiers played while Macpherson and Hans Wolf clapped and cheered. Hans Wolf suggested that world would be much better if the problems were resolved by a football match instead of war. No one dies in a football match. No children are orphaned. No wives become widows. These are the heart-touching and true lines. I would prefer cricket, I told him. Then we Tommies could be sure of winning probably. So here I stand for Jim Macpherson, and Jim Macpherson told to Hans Wolf that I would prefer cricket. Okay? Why? Because then we Tommies could be sure of winning. So in a fun way, so that we could win the match in fun way, he told to Hans Wolf. And on this, we laughed at that and together we watched the game. Sad to say. Now look at the picture here first. Here grey coats and khaki coats. They all are together. They are playing football. Sad to say, Connie. Fritz won. Now again here Jim is in a happy mood, but here he is also in a fun way. He was saying that Fritz won 2 goals to 1, but as Hans Wolf generously here means honestly, he said our goal was wider than theirs, so it was not quite fair. So he said honestly that who said Hans Wolf that their goal they were wider than the Jim Macpherson team's goal. So that's why it was not fair. It means the time came and all too soon when the game was finished. Now the time came all too soon. The game was finished. The game was over. The synapse and the rum and the sausage had long since run out. Run out means came to an end. And we knew it was all over. I wished Hans well and told him I hoped we would see his family again soon, that the fighting would end and we could all go home. Now they wished each other and they hoped for each other that they meet to their family again and the fighting would end soon and they could all go home. I think that is what every soldier wants on both sides. Really, it was the thing that every soldier wanted to go back home alive. Hans Wolf said, "Take care, Jim Macpherson. I shall never forget this moment, nor you." Now Hans Wolf said to him that take care of yourself, Jim, and I shall never forget the moment and not you. He saluted and walked away from me slowly. Unwillingly, I felt. Now Jim Macpherson felt that he walked away from him. Who walked away? Hans Wolf walked away from him slowly and unwillingly. Why slowly and unwillingly? Because the moment they spent with each other, they shared their rum ration, their sausage, their rum ration, everything with each other. Not only Hans Wolf and Jim Macpherson, but also the other soldiers. They played, they danced, they laughed, they did everything each other. They all were together on Christmas Eve. But now it's a time of departure. Now who felt? Jim Macpherson felt that Hans Wolf was unwilling to go. He turned to wave just once. Just once he turned to wave. Who? Hans Wolf, and then became one of the 100 of grey-coated men. Means became the 100 of grey-coated men. Means they all were together. Okay, grey-coated men, they all were together, drifting back towards me to move back towards their trenches. They all went together back to their trenches. That night, back in our dugouts, we heard them singing a carol and singing it quite beautifully. Dugouts means a shelter for soldiers made by digging a hole in the ground and covering it. Now that night, they all were back in their dugouts, and what they heard? They heard that German, they are singing a carol. What is the meaning of carol? A Christmas song, okay? A Christian's religious song, okay? So it's a religious song and singing it quite beautifully. They were singing it very beautifully. It was still night. Still night means silent night. Our boys gave them a rousing chorus. Rousing means what? A song making you feel emotional, excited, or enthusiastic, right? So, rousing chorus means the part of a song that is repeated at the end of each verse, right? It's the part of a song. So, their boys, they gave them a rousing chorus of while shepherds watched. We exchanged carols for a while and then we all fell silent. They sung together all the carols and then they fell silent. We had our time of peace and goodwill, a time I will treasure as long as I live. It means we had a time, that was a time of their peace, their goodwill, and a time Jim Macpherson will treasure as long as I live. Means it was very valuable for him and he kept all these memories as a treasure as long as he lived. After the football match, all the drinks and eatables were consumed. Now it was the time to depart. Hans Wolf saluted Macpherson and walked away slowly and unwillingly. That night, the Germans were heard singing carol. The English soldiers and the Germans, they exchanged carols for a while and then it was all silence. Dearest Connie, by Christmas time next year, this war will be nothing but a distant means far away, and terrible means very unpleasant memory. So he wrote to Connie at last that by Christmas time, means by next year, this war will be nothing but a distant and a terrible, a very unpleasant memory. I know from all that happened today how much both armies long for peace. Means internally, whatever happened today, how much both the armies, the Germans and the British, they long for peace. Means internally they wanted peace. We shall be together again soon, I am sure of it. And at last, with the hopeful note, Jim Macpherson ended his letter. Your loving Jim. Now, here is a comprehension check for you people. Just go through it and do all the questions in your notebook. Jim Macpherson wrote in his letter that he would treasure those moments all his life. Macpherson ended the letter hoping that the war would end soon. Both the armies longed for peace, and he was sure they would be together again. Really, it was the wonderful experience of Jim Macpherson. During war, he saw love, peace, and celebration in the Christmas Eve. It was unbelievable for him when the German officer Hans Wolf came to him and they both shared not only rum ration and cake but also their feelings, hobbies and stories. This part also conveys a message that whether they were British soldiers or German soldiers, they all were warm-hearted. They had seen the sufferings of war. Internally, they also wanted peace, but they all were performing their duties towards their country also. Don't you think that this chapter is full of suspense? there is one more suspense. What would the author do with the letter? Let's imagine together. Till then, goodbye. Take care.